Have you ever felt overlooked? Like no matter how hard you work, pray, or show up, people pass you by. You've been faithful but unseen. You've been serving but unrecognized. Today, we're going to deal with that feeling, the pain of being hidden, and why God may be keeping you in the shadows for a reason. Because your time is coming. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a season where it feels like God hit the pause button on your life? You prayed, you fasted, you prepared, and still nothing seemed to move. The promotion didn't come. The relationship didn't unfold. The opportunity didn't knock. And you started asking yourself, Lord, did you forget me? But what if the delay wasn't a punishment? What if it were part of a divine calendar that doesn't match your watch? Today, we step into the truth of divine timing over human timing. Now listen to me closely. One of the hardest lessons every believer has to learn is this: God does not operate on your schedule. He doesn't wake up in the morning and ask you what you want him to do by Friday. God has his own clock. He has his own calendar. And when he moves in perfection. The problem is, we live in a microwave generation. We want everything quick, instant success, instant breakthrough, instant recognition. But God is more like a slow cooker. He lets things simmer. He allows flavors to develop, because what he's preparing in you is too valuable to be rushed. You see, divine timing means God knows not only where you're going, but also when you're ready to get there. And many of us are frustrated because we want to sit on the throne before we've survived the wilderness. We want the crown without the cross. We want visibility without the maturity. And God says, no, no, no. I love you too much to promote you before you're prepared. When Tony Evans reflects on his darkest seasons, he reminds us that timing is never about convenience. It's about construction. God uses hidden seasons to construct your strength, your faith, and your character. Take Joseph, for example. He had dreams of leadership, dreams of influence, dreams of greatness. But before those dreams came true, he was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and locked in prison. Now, if you were Joseph, you'd probably say, Lord, what's going on? Didn't you show me the dream? Didn't you promise me the future? But what Joseph didn't see was the divine clock ticking. God was arranging a famine years down the road. God was positioning him to be second in command in Egypt. And the delay was not destruction, it was direction. Or think about Moses. God placed the call on his life, but then sent him to the backside of the desert for 40 years. 40 years, that's not a delay, that's a lifetime. But when the bush finally burned, Moses was no longer an impulsive young man. He was a seasoned shepherd who understood patience, humility, and dependence on God. And then there's David. David was anointed king as a teenager, but he didn't sit on the throne until years later. In between, he was running from Saul, hiding in caves, learning how to trust God when the promise looked impossible. Because God doesn't just give you the promise. He prepares you for the weight of the promise. And maybe that's where you are right now. You're holding a promise but living in the delay. You know what God spoke, but all you see is silence. Let me tell you something. Silence is not absence. Delay is not denial. Just because you don't hear him doesn't mean he stopped speaking. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean he's not working. Behind the curtain of your life, God is pulling strings, moving pieces, orchestrating details you can't even imagine. See, human timing says, I want it now. Divine timing says, you'll have it when it won't destroy you. Human timing says, I should already be there. Divine timing says, you're not ready yet, but when you are, nothing can stop you. Human timing looks at the clock on the wall. Divine timing looks at the calendar of heaven. And you've got to make a choice. Are you going to live by your watch or by God's will? Because if you try to rush him, you'll end up with Ishmael instead of Isaac. If you try to force it, you'll crown yourself king before your kingdom is ready. If you try to open the door on your own, you may walk into a room that was never meant for you. This is why Tony Evans emphasizes that waiting is not wasted. Waiting is working. God is doing something in the waiting room that no stage, no spotlight, and no applause could ever do for you. Some of you right now are frustrated because people around you seem to be moving ahead. They're getting married. They're getting promotions. They're starting businesses. And you're still in the shadows. But let me remind you, God doesn't measure you against other people's timeline. He has an assignment with your name on it. And when it's your time, you won't have to manipulate. You won't have to beg. You won't have to push. The door will open because heaven commanded it. So stop comparing your delay to someone else's advancement. You don't know what they had to compromise to get there. You don't know what weight they weren't ready to carry. But you, yes, you are being handcrafted by God's timing. And when He's finished, you'll thank Him for every hidden year, every unanswered prayer, every season of silence. Because it all prepared you for the moment He brings you out. Sometimes the most powerful work God does in your life doesn't happen on the stage. It happens in the shadows. It doesn't happen when everyone's watching, but when no one's paying attention. You think God forgot you, but He's actually training you. You think you've been overlooked, but heaven is overdeveloping you. Because hidden seasons, though painful, are the birthplace of power. Now let me explain this. God has a pattern, and His pattern is preparation before presentation. He hides before He reveals. He shapes before He shows. Because if you step out too soon, you may shine for a moment, but burn out before your assignment is complete. Think about David again. He was out in the fields, taking care of sheep that didn't belong to him. Nobody was clapping for him. Nobody was saying, "Look at David." But out there in the shadows, David was learning how to fight lions and bears. He was sharpening his aim with that sling. He was learning how to worship God when nobody was watching. And let me tell you something. If David hadn't killed lions in private, he would have never been ready to kill Goliath in public. His hidden season gave him the power to stand when the nation was trembling. Some of you are in the fields right now. Nobody sees you. Nobody's applauding you. You feel invisible. But God says, don't despise this season. I'm building something in you that the crowd can't give and the spotlight can't teach. I'm giving you power in the dark. When TonyEvans talks about hidden seasons, he reminds us that power is forged in the fire of obscurity. You cannot get oil without crushing the olive. You cannot get wine without pressing the grapes. You cannot get true spiritual strength without the shadows that force you to depend on God alone. Joseph was hidden in a prison. That prison didn't look like a purpose. It looked like punishment. But it was in prison that Joseph learned to interpret dreams. It was in prison that he learned to lead people who had lost hope. And when Pharaoh needed a man who could lead a nation, Joseph was ready because prison had prepared him. Moses was hidden in the desert. He probably thought his destiny had died in the sand. But out there, far away from Pharaoh's palace, God was teaching him how to shepherd sheep. Why? Because one day he would have to shepherd a nation. The hidden place became his training ground. Even Jesus, don't miss this, spent 30 years in Nazareth before he spent 3 years in ministry. 30 years in obscurity. 30 years with no miracles recorded. No sermons preached. No crowds following him. But when the time came, the hidden years had already forged his foundation. And maybe you're wondering, why hasn't it happened for me yet? Why am I still unseen? But the truth is, God is strengthening you in silence, building muscles that only resistance can create. You see, hidden seasons are where discipline is formed. Hidden seasons are where humility is developed. Hidden seasons are where your roots grow deep enough to sustain the weight of fruit later on. Because anybody can shout on the mountain, but it takes a different kind of faith to worship in the cave. Right now, you may feel like nobody sees your prayers, nobody notices your sacrifice, nobody cares about your faithfulness, but heaven sees. God is watching how you steward what looks small, because if you can be faithful with sheep, He knows you'll be faithful with a kingdom. If you can handle a prison with integrity, He knows you can handle a palace with wisdom. That's why you can't skip the shadows. You can't microwave maturity. You can't fast track faith. Power doesn't come from applause. It comes from being pressed. It comes from carrying burdens when no one thanks you. It comes from trusting God when there's no evidence of a breakthrough. That's when your faith gets real. That's when your roots go deep. That's when you stop leaning on your own strength and start drawing from His. Tony Evans often says that the reason God allows hidden seasons is because He's not just interested in building you. He's interested in building you. If you only chase the blessing, you'll crumble under the pressure. But if you let Him build you, you'll have the strength to carry what He gives. So don't despise where you are. Don't resent the shadows. Don't curse the quiet places, because when nobody else is clapping, God is crafting. When nobody else is calling your name, God is carving your character. And when the moment comes, you won't just be another person who showed up. You'll be a person who's been shaped by the hidden hand of God. You may feel like you've been buried, but you've actually been planted. And when the season shifts, the fruit of your hidden years will testify louder than any words ever could. That's why the dark is necessary. That's why the unseen matters. Because it's in the hidden seasons that God is giving you power that can't be taken away. One of the deepest wounds people carry is the fear that because things haven't happened yet, maybe they never will. You prayed for it, you believed for it, you even prepared for it, and yet silence. Every closed door feels like rejection. Every delay feels like denial. But what if the delay is not God saying no? What if the delay is God saying, not yet? Today we lean into the truth that delay is not denial. Now hear me. Just because something hasn't shown up in your life doesn't mean it's been canceled. God doesn't run a cancellation service. He runs a preparation service. The problem is when we don't see movement, when we don't see fruit, we start assuming the worst. We assume maybe God changed His mind. Maybe the promise expired. Maybe He skipped over us. But let me tell you something. The God who made the promise is the same God who keeps the promise. And if He said it, He will bring it to pass. The question is not whether God will do it, but whether you can wait without giving up, whether you can trust without proof, whether you can believe without a calendar date. When TonyEvans teaches on this, he often draws from the stories of men and women who endured long seasons of waiting, reminding us that waiting is not a sign of God's rejection, but a stage for His redirection. Let's talk about Abraham. God promised him a son, not just any son, a son through whom nations would come, a son through whom the Messiah would eventually arrive. But year after year passed, and Sarah's womb was still barren. Imagine the pain of praying for something holy and hearing nothing back. The years stretched into decades, and I'm sure Abraham felt the sting of delay. But eventually, at the set time, not Abraham's time, Isaac was born. And here's what you've got to catch. The delay didn't cancel the promise, it confirmed it. Because when Isaac came, nobody could say it was Abraham's skill. Nobody could say it was Sarah's strength. It had to be God. Delay made the promise undeniable. And maybe that's the reason for your delay. God wants it to be so clear that when your breakthrough comes, no one will be able to take credit but Him. Think about Hannah. She cried out year after year for a child, while Peninnah mocked her, and life seemed unfair. But when Samuel was finally born, he didn't just bless Hannah. He blessed Israel as a prophet. The delay was not denial, it was destiny. Or consider Lazarus. Jesus loved Lazarus, but when He heard Lazarus was sick, He waited. By the time He showed up, Lazarus was dead. Now, if you and I were there, we would have said, Jesus, you're too late. You denied Him by delaying. But Jesus said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God. The delay set the stage for a resurrection that was greater than a healing. And let's not forget Joseph. From the pit to Potiphar's house, from Potiphar's house to the prison, from the prison to the palace. If you looked at his life in the middle chapters, you'd think God had denied him. But all along, God was setting up the timing so that Joseph would be exactly where he needed to be when Pharaoh had a dream. Delay was not denial, it was alignment. This is the rhythm of God's work. What looks like rejection is often protection. What feels like denial is actually divine delay designed to bring you into position. See, God knows something you don't. He knows the road ahead. He knows the traps you can't see. He knows the battles you aren't ready to fight. And sometimes he delays you not to punish you, but to prepare you. You're asking for the palace, but he knows you still need the pit. You're asking for the crown, but he knows you still need the cross. That's why you've got to shift your perspective. Stop looking at every delay as God ignoring you. Start seeing delay as God protecting you. Stop thinking the closed door is a punishment. Start realizing it might be a shield. Because if God let you walk through that door too soon, you might not survive what's on the other side. TonyEvans often says that God's no might actually mean not yet. And if you confuse the two, you'll forfeit faith in the very season that was designed to strengthen it. So don't let the enemy convince you that because you haven't seen it, you never will. Don't let delay whisper denial into your spirit. Don't let the silence make you settle for less. Because the same God who raised Lazarus after 4 days can raise your dead situation after 4 years. The same God who gave Abraham a son in his old age can breathe life into your barren dream. The same God who elevated Joseph after years of delay can lift you out of the shadows at the perfect moment. The question is not whether God can do it. The question is whether you can endure the delay without letting go of the promise. Every hidden season has an expiration date. God never hides you forever. He hides you for a reason. He hides you for a season. But when the time comes for him to reveal you, the reveal will be far greater than the years you spent in the shadows. The pain of waiting will be swallowed up in the power of unveiling. What you thought was wasted time becomes the stage for God's divine timing. Let me make it plain. When God pulls you out of hiding, he doesn't just slip you into the background. He doesn't just give you a small introduction. No, when God reveals you, it's a showcase of his glory. Because the longer the hide, the greater the reveal. Take David, for example. When Samuel came to anoint a king, David wasn't even invited to the lineup. He was still out with the sheep, overlooked by his own father. But when the oil refused to flow on any of his brothers, they had to go call for David. Imagine that moment. Imagine David walking in, still smelling like sheep, dirt under his fingernails, nobody expecting anything from him. And then heaven opened and Samuel poured the oil, declaring, "This is the one." Now here's the truth. David didn't have to audition. He didn't have to campaign. He didn't have to beg for recognition. God's revelation made it undeniable. Because when heaven decides it's your time, earth has no choice but to acknowledge it. TonyEvans often reminds us that God hides you to protect you, but he reveals you to position you. And when the reveal comes, no enemy, no critic, no gatekeeper can keep you from stepping into the place God has prepared. Joseph's story is another testimony. Hidden in a pit, hidden in Potiphar's house, hidden in a prison cell. For years it looked like his dream was dead, but in a single day, just one day, he went from prisoner to prime minister. That's the power of God's reveal. It's not a slow drip, it's a sudden shift. When Pharaoh called Joseph out of that cell, he wasn't just released, he was elevated. And the years of hiding were necessary because when the reveal came, Joseph didn't just step into a position, he stepped into purpose. And here's what I love. When Joseph's brothers finally saw him, they didn't even recognize him. The same people who threw him in the pit had to bow before him in the palace. That's what happens when God reveals you. The very ones who dismissed you, doubted you, and discarded you will have to witness what God has done in your life. And this is the beauty of divine revelation. It doesn't just lift you, it shifts the atmosphere around you. People who thought they knew your limits suddenly realize they never saw the whole picture. Think about Jesus. 30 years hidden in Nazareth. 30 years living quietly, working as a carpenter, unknown to the masses. But when John the Baptist baptized him in the Jordan River, heaven opened up and the voice of God declared, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Do you see it? The reveal was greater than the hide. For 3 decades, he was hidden. For 3 years, he was revealed. But those 3 years turned the world upside down. Because when God reveals you, he redeems the hidden years in a moment. The delay doesn't diminish the power of the reveal. It amplifies it. That's why some of you need to stop worrying about being overlooked. If God has hidden you, it's only because He plans to reveal you. And when He does, it won't be in a corner. It won't be in secret. He'll do it in such a way that even your enemies have to admit, surely the Lord has been with them. The reveal is not just about visibility. It's about credibility. God lets the hidden years authenticate your calling so that when He puts you on display, no one can deny the power that backs you up. So if you feel invisible, if you feel forgotten, if you feel like the shadows are swallowing you up, let me tell you what's really happening. God is setting the stage. He's arranging the spotlight. He's tuning the orchestra. And when the curtain rises, your reveal will not just be for your benefit. It will be for His glory. That's why the reveal always outshines the hide, because the hide teaches you dependence, and the reveal shows His deliverance. The hide humbles you, and the reveal honors you. The hide strips away pride, and the reveal covers you in purpose. And when it happens, you'll understand why you had to be hidden for so long, because the power of the reveal is that nobody, not even you, will be able to deny that it was all God's hand bringing you into the light. We've walked through the shadows of waiting, the pain of hiding, the frustration of delay, and the power of divine timing. And if you've been listening closely, you now know your story is not stuck, your purpose is not canceled, and your season is not over. Child of God, hear me. You may be hidden, but you're not forgotten. You may be delayed, but you're not denied. You may be pressed down, but you are not crushed, because the same God who hid David in the fields, Joseph in the prison, Moses in the desert, and Jesus in Nazareth is the same God who is writing your story right now. Your hiding has a reason. Your waiting has a purpose. Your delay has a design. And when the reveal comes, when the reveal comes, it will silence every doubt, shut the mouth of every critic, and prove that God's hand has been on you the whole time. So don't give up in the shadows. Don't quit in the silence. Don't despise the waiting room, because your time is coming. And when God says it's your time, no devil in hell, no person on earth, no force in the universe will be able to stop what He has ordained. You've been hidden for a reason, but you will be revealed for a purpose. Trust His timing. Embrace the hiding. Endure the delay, because your story is not over. The best chapter is just about to begin.